on the Daily Drive. Property Fast Track with Charles Tarby. Thanks to Century 21. Smarter, bolder, faster. Go to century21.com.au.
That's right, it is time to talk property. Mika Buck, and we're joined with Charles Tarby this evening. G'day, Charles.
How you going, Sam? Good to hear from you.
It looks like you've got
some volume.
Yeah,
Let me help you with some volume.
Well, I could hear him across the room. But,
you can hear me through a brick wall, sir. I can tell you that for now.
We're projecting. Charles can hear them through his soundproof
Now
booth.
you sound too loud. No, that's good. That's good.
Welcome to the program.
Thank you
Chairman
very
of
much.
Century 21. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Great week in the marketplace. It's been very interesting again. Lots of things happening out there. The marketplace is still pretty much where it was, apart from the fact there's a lot of buyers sitting on the fence a bit more, except for unusual developments, but which I know you've got one we can chat about.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a moment.
The clearance rates were fantastic, 70.3% on average. That's fantastic.
Is that around the country?
Right around the country.
Wow.
Sydney came in at 69.4, so that's a very low
Thank God.
figure
Can
for
we
Sydney.
please slow down the property inflation in Sydney?
We've been wanting to do that for a while, but you know what, Mickey, that's still a really good number, 69.4%. The best performing capital city was actually Adelaide, 75%.
Is that so?
Yeah, Canberra, the other ones I've picked.
Yeah.
Every week I talk about Melbourne, I talk about Canberra, and I talk about the Sunshine Coast.
Yeah.
Melbourne came in at 73.1. So it was really quite excellent when you look at it. And 73.6. Canberra came in at 73.1, but Adelaide 75%. So still very strong.
A little unusual, I think, for Adelaide to be that strong. We might unpick that a bit with Tom Panos later on this half hour. He's going to join us to talk auctions. It's interesting that you said the Sunshine Coast too, Charles, because we go around the grounds in this show. We talk with one of the great local real estate agents from Century 21's extensive national network, and we are indeed going to beautiful sunny Maroochydore on the Sunshine Coast.
What a great place. And the agent that we're going to talk to, Damien, I'll let you introduce Damien formally a little later on, but Damien has been the number one real estate company within the C21 organisation. He's done that quite some time. And he's made it up into the top echelon right across the world out of 110,000 salespeople.
Wow, so the Sunshine Coast is doing well for him.
Yeah, but he's been it is a great place to invest, but Damien himself is quite an exceptional real estate practitioner.
We're looking forward to talking to him a little bit later on. We're also going to answer, or rather attempt to address, the great property dilemma question, head versus heart. Do you buy with your head or do you buy with your heart? We'll talk with Andrew Rechtman, the Executive General Manager of realestate.com.au, quite shortly actually. But in the meantime, Charles, this was a really interesting off-the-plan sale which kicked off in Sydney over the weekend, I believe. It's Hyde Park's King and Phillip development. So this is in Sydney. It's on the corner of King Street and Phillip Street, so overlooking beautiful Hyde Park, and it's a development of luxurious apartments. On the first day of sales, they sold $250 million worth of apartments, which is about 80% of them, which is that's great for an opening day of off-the-plan sales, isn't it?
It's not too bad, is it?
You'd be happy with that.
Some developers very happy.
Yes, a good little weekend of work. But you know what, Sam, these kinds of properties are not impacted by the marketplace we're in. When you're in the heart of the city of Sydney, where it's very, very limited in terms of the quality stock available. That's not surprising to me. What I am noticing as you get further and further out into the suburbs, those are the ones that are starting to struggle. They're the ones that are being discounted by developers right now. In fact, many of the sites haven't even come out of the ground. A lot of developers have actually sold the sites and decided to abandon developing the projects. So to see this, but also to see that you mentioned when we were chatting about this when I came in, that only 2 of these properties were sold to people
Overseas
outside
investors.
That's
of
right.
Australia. So they're all sold domestically.
That's right. Out of all of the properties that were sold, only 2 of them were sold to foreign investors.
Yep.
The rest were sold to local buyers. Now, I would have thought if this was Sydney even a year ago, 2 years ago maybe, when there was a seriously large influx of foreign capital and foreign buyers, for a brand new development which are eligible to be sold to foreign investors, you would have expected that number to be significantly higher.
Well, they've been pushed out. And that is a bit of a concern that they've been pushed out. They've been pushed to Canada, they've been pushed to the US for a couple of reasons. One, that we were sort of a little bit unfriendly towards the Asian economies, Asian buyers coming in here, but they did help kick on the building industry, because without that money coming in, I don't believe that the building industry would have gotten that leg up that it did get up. And a lot of people that traditionally would buy those properties in the heart of the city of Sydney or Melbourne or Brisbane would have been, more so Sydney and Melbourne, would have been the Asian investors. Now, that's given the opportunity for local people to buy, which is a very good thing.
Yeah.
But keep in mind that those that are buying now in the city of Sydney and were generally the ones that were buying in the outlying areas because of affordability. So this is why I'm saying keep an eye on what's happening on the edges of the capital cities, because there could be some problems there in the future.
The problem with overseas and I guess international investment is always, is it pressing up prices for local investors? And so are you seeing that maybe with less overseas investment that properties are becoming more affordable, or are we still at the top of the market when it comes to that?
We're definitely hit a ceiling in much of Australia. Melbourne and Canberra are still the exceptions in my view because of their prices, but we've definitely hit the ceiling, and mostly because the buyer interest has declined. So you'll have your auction, and Tom will tell you every time he goes to an auction, most of the times he is really having to be a serious auctioneer working with the buyers, the sellers, the audience, the agents, whereas before people come along and they compete against each other. Now they have to really work hard to make it happen.
How's this for deep pockets, Charles? It's estimated the sub-penthouse in this development sold for $10.1 million. So this is not a waterfront block. This is not...
Sub-penthouse.
It is a sub-penthouse. So, I mean, it would be have a nice view of Hyde Park and over Sydney, and you probably might get glimpses of the Harbour Bridge perhaps, but it's not the penthouse, it's a sub-penthouse, and it's not a waterfront property. $10.1 million.
I've got a developer client of mine who bought one of his own properties back that he sold some years ago, and it's down near the harbour, and he's paid $14 million for it. And he's spending $2 million renovating, so that's probably very cheap.
I suppose no need to renovate on a brand new apartment block. Yeah, we're talking property with Charles Tarbey, Sam Stove and Mika Bucker. Now, one of the perennial property dilemma questions is this one: head versus heart. Do you buy with your head, or do you let your heart take over and imagine yourself relaxing peacefully by the sofa of your dream home?
Or by the pool, or by the bar, or with your beautiful harborside view. But some new research from realestate.com.au says the conundrum is often split down gender lines. Their Executive General Manager, Andrew Reckman, joins us now. Hello, Andrew.
Good evening, how are you?
Good. Now tell us about the Sense of Place survey that you did.
Well, it's not surprising, I think, that along gender lines, approach to property splits as it does in many other ways. So we surveyed 1,100 people and asked them, do you go with your head or do you go with your heart? And we found that 2/3 of men go with their head and just over 50% of women go with their heart. So there is a bit more emotion involved in buying property, and women are leading the way.
Well, Andrew, Charles here. Were you surprised at that stat?
We weren't terribly surprised with that stat, and we also know, and Charles, you know from your own experience, that women are often the decision makers in a purchasing decision. So when it comes to buying your home, the final say often rests with the women in the household rather than the men.
But we're always right, don't you know that?
No, look, hang on. 30 years ago, I'm very upset with My Big Fat Greek Wedding, that movie, because they stole one of the lines. that about 30 years ago, I did a seminar, and I'm not sure where I heard the line, but it came up in that movie, and that is when I stand up in front of people and I say, you should see the look I get from females. I say, now, come on, the man is the head of the household. Let's get that right now. And you get all these death stares. And then eventually I say, yes, however, but the woman is the neck, and she decides which way the head turns. And that line was used in that movie, My Big Fat Greek Wedding, and I think it's very true. And in real estate, the ladies generally will make the decision.
And isn't that a good thing?
Yeah, I suppose so.
Andrew, I was waiting for you then.
I'll dive
into that one, Charles.
Andrew, so buying with your head can be a bit of a cold, calculated decision. Surely there's some merit in getting excited about a property and buying with a bit of heartfelt passion, right?
There absolutely is. And in fact, Charles asked what were we surprised by. We weren't so surprised by the difference between men and women's attitude, but overall, the number one factor in choosing a property is not price. In fact, it's fairly low down the ranking. The number one factor is neighbourhood. So people really want to live in a place which gives them the lifestyle opportunity that they're looking for at the relevant stage of their life. So 27% of people actually responded neighbourhood is the most important factor for us. Price is actually well below that at just 19%. So less than 1 in 5 people are actually thinking that price is the most important reason for choosing a home.
Well, so among the other reasons used to be, and you talked about My Big Fat Greek Wedding, used to be proximity to family. The family actually buys the house next door in that movie, so that might be a little too close for comfort. But how much of a factor is that proximity to family when buying a house now?
And that was probably a surprise to us as well. It seems to have changed, and maybe this is a generational shift where perhaps more like Americans now that we're willing to move a bit further away from family. So only 14% of people thought that proximity to friends and family was the number one reason for choosing a home. They're quite happy to do the Sunday lunch or the Friday evening dinners with their family at a remove and perhaps drive over to see family rather than having them pop in with 2 minutes notice.
Sundays only.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure completely about that, Andrew. I get on incredibly well with my 4 sisters. They all live in Brisbane. I live in Sydney, so there might be a reason for it.
Andrew, do you find that heart purchases tend to be more impulsive? I mean, are these the ones you sometimes see people drove past an open home or an auction and just decided to buy it on a whim?
Not really. I mean, the heart it takes over after really thinking about a property, and people want to do research on a property. They want to look at what's on the market, go to different inspections and really get a sense of which property is going to be right for them. But it might be a feature of the property that really appeals to them. So, for example, I'm feeling my age because for the 30 pluses, the number one room they're looking for to get excited about is the living room. For the 18 to 29s, it's the bedroom. So depending on your age group, I'm very much in the living room category, unfortunately. But people really do get excited about the emotion as they go through the research process, and particularly in a market like Sydney or Melbourne, where there are a lot of auctions, that emotional commitment is necessary to actually take you over the line when you're making a bid at an auction.
And I would imagine when you're talking about stages of life, when you do move from the bedroom stage to the living room stage, you probably have kids by that point. So proximity to schools would be important.
Absolutely. So that it goes back to that neighbourhood. So people in neighbourhoods are looking for somewhere that has proximity to schools, ideally some parkland if they're in a beachside city, proximity to the beach, and obviously ease of access to the CBD through public transport and local amenities such as shops and cafes. They're all very, very important in people's decision making.
Well, Andrew, it does indeed sound like home is where the heart is. Thanks very much for joining us on the program.
Andrew.
That's a pleasure.
It's Andrew Rechtman, the Executive General Manager of realestate.com.au. Charles, you would have bought a few properties over the years. Are you a head buyer or a heart buyer or a combination of the two?
I'm actually not that good a buyer. I'm pretty good at giving advice.
Yeah.
But I have I should call it a fetish, but I have a real enjoyment out of buying older properties and not even necessarily doing them up. There's just something about them. I know that I could do better by getting a development and developing sites and so on. But I bought some lovely properties. I have one in particular up in Leura, which is the beautiful Bon Ton Cafe for those that go up to Leura. I bought that building a dozen years ago, and I get joy out of driving past it. I get a rental return, but I don't get anything else. But I do get joy out of looking at this beautiful building.
I'm totally with you, actually. I like old. I like character. You know, I'm living in a big old beach house at the moment, and it's unrenovated, and I hope that not too much gets done with it. I like the old, wide hallways and the pressed tin ceilings and the character. And a friend of mine in that Blue Mountains area actually bought some old tea houses.
Yes.
And they've renovated it just so caringly, and they haven't lost any of the love-worn elements of it, but they've still brought themselves. And I think that's such a nice thing to actually maintain character.
There is something about it. Yeah, owning real estate's great and watching the capital growth is great, but what do you do with it? Buy more property? I'm not quite sure. No, I'm the worst person. But if you want advice, I'll give you good advice. I just can't give myself good advice.
Is there a risk in overextending yourself if you buy more with your heart than with your head, especially these days? I mean, in cities around the country now, prices have been going up and up and up.
I have seen it.
And if you really want a place, sometimes that desire to have it might push you to the breaking point financially.
Sometimes it's ego too, and we've touched on this in the past, where people bidding at auctions sometimes bid beyond what they should because they know somebody else in the room that's bidding against them. It becomes quite an unusual battle.
Yeah.
So yes, we've got to watch that very carefully.
What prevails, head or heart, doesn't matter. Evidently, it's what women want. So we've established that. We'll take a quick break. Afterwards, we'll chat with Damien Side from Century 21 in sunny Maroochydore. Yeah, Sam Stove and Mika Buchan with you on the Daily Drive. Mika,
Yes?
remember the good old days when you'd finish school and you'd run home and you'd drop your school bag off and then you'd just be out in the street with your mates until the lights came on?
I'll do the homework later, Mum.
Yeah, so yeah, I'll be back for dinner. Might have been tag, might have been hide and seek, you might have been playing backyard cricket, you might have been kicking the footy, you could have just been playing around on your bike. We all had the freedom to just be out there and be kids.
We sure did. But now, not only children playing with fidget spinners, which I haven't quite gotten the hang of, but my 6-year-old niece is an expert in. There's all kinds of games on their phones, but parents are stealing memories and developments away from their children by letting them do that. You've got to have kids going out and playing more, free play. And that's according to CEO of Extended After School Daycare, Darren Stevenson, who joins us now.
Hi, Darren.
Hi, hello, how are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you, and thank you for joining us. What was your favourite game to play as a kid?
Oh, I didn't have a favourite game as such, but when you were talking about the after-school activities and how kids went out in the street, riding my bike up and down the street, through the bush, over the hills, doing jumps, those kinds of things were my favourite activities after school.
Me too. I had a Malvern Star bike, a white one, which it was regularly covered in mud, and I was proud of that. And we'd be riding it through the creek and through the vacant lot, which my mum was thrilled about when I finally admitted that to her last week. But all that unstructured play is such an important part of kids letting their imaginations become strong and robust instead of all these games that just sort of direct everything for them, right?
Oh, you're absolutely right. Number one, play is vital. It's a very important aspect of the child development. But in modern society, it's really difficult to create those opportunities, like you were talking about, where kids can ride bikes, go through the bush, and spend time away from home. Time, safety, traffic, all those things compound that problem. And so almost as a reaction to that, families who have wanted to provide opportunities for kids have over-scheduled tasks. And so it's things like the ballet and the violin and the tennis and the swimming classes, and there's very little opportunity left for unstructured play. So over-scheduling actually takes away those opportunities which arise in child-initiated play.
Isn't there a problem as well in just the ubiquity of video games and screens and things? I mean, if it's not an iPhone or an iPod, it's an iPad. If it's not that, it's a computer or a laptop. If it's not that, it's the Xbox. They're surrounded by these other forms of entertainment, which are so alluring and attracting for a child that you go, well, I don't blame them for being lured into it, right? That they're enticing.
Oh, I think that's a good point that you make. It is an easy lure. It's entertainment. We all like to be entertained. We all like to see movies and play games and watch YouTube funny videos and those kinds of things. But it's important that there's a balance in every child's life. And the easy option of the iPad isn't always the best option.
Yeah, don't use your iPad as a babysitter. One of the is the secret that when if you have kids, or even if your kids are getting a little bit older, that you actually also proactively do things outside with them, so kids remember even how to do it. Because kids, their whole universe can be their home sometimes. Kids are almost becoming agoraphobic because they're on their screens all the time. Is the key actually being proactively, it's just kind of going on adventures and walks and things with them so they know how to do it themselves? Because kids don't know how to play.
Well, that's right. They need to be to have that modelled for them. They need to be led to a degree, and it's a responsibility of the parent to create that environment which is going to be conducive to unstructured play. And they might have to initiate some of that. And I think sometimes parents get a bit in awe or worried that they can't be the perfect parent and create that environment for their child. But you know what? Part of it's just being involved, showing up, having proximity with the child, and they will begin to initiate the play over time.
Also, you're talking about the pressure of being the perfect parent. Don't you think also it's taking that pressure off? Like letting your kids see you make a mistake, not being afraid to model that that's okay too, rather than having to be perfect?
Oh, I think that's a great parenting skill, to show your children that you're willing to push yourself out of your own comfort zone, make mistakes, have to be taught by your own child the rules of the game that they've invented, interact in their environment. For children, that creates a few important opportunities, and one is it enhances their creativity. It gives them the opportunity to be the leader even with their own parents, to set rules and guidelines, negotiate, solve problems. The list just goes on and on. The advantages of unstructured play, particularly with others, whether it's another child or a parent, they're just immeasurable.
Have you got any quick examples of some ways to encourage unstructured play? We've only got about 45 seconds, I'm sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. Part of it is making resources available. So I'd say to all the parents out there, these school holidays, take away the electronics, give your kids some supplies.
Expect some tantrums though, but that's all right.
Watch them create and explore, and their brain will thank you for it. So coloured pencils, rope, Lego blocks, icy pole sticks, all those things where they can use their imagination and be creative.
And if they don't have a bike, buy them one. Darren Stevenson from Extend After School Care. Thanks very much for joining us.
After school care.
Sure.
Many thanks.
Thank you for your time. Look, the thing about it as well, which I find odd, is that like parents at the moment didn't grow up with iPhones and consoles. Maybe consoles, maybe early ones, but their childhood was unstructured and free to a degree. I don't know why they've forgotten that.
I feel really lucky. My mum was into painting. We read books in our house. We played games, and for me, I'm still kind of really in love with all those quite, I guess, lo-fi, you know, things that you can touch and hold and make and do.
Yeah. Well, Mika, it's been absolutely great having you on the program tonight. We'll see you again soon.
Hooray! I hope so.
After 8 o'clock, Bill Morrow, CEO of the NBN, joins Trevor Long and I for Talking Technology. There are some great advantages in being the world's largest real estate company. For start, your Century 21 local office uses the best technology and knowledge base in the world. Combined with the fact that each office is independently owned and operated, your local Century 21 agent knows your city, your suburb, your town and your street. It also means Century 21 agents can offer a huge range of resources and experience, including information from over 300 offices around the country. It's no surprise Century 21 is the fastest growing real estate brand in Australia. Buying, selling or looking for a new home to rent, contact your local Century 21 office and find out why they really are smarter, bolder, faster. Visit century21.com.au. 13 12 83 is the number. If you do have a property question for Charles Tarby, give us a call right now. You've got the man himself for a little while longer yet. But Charles, Mika, it's time to go around the grounds thanks to Century 21's extensive national network of real estate agents. It's always great to just dance to other corners of Australia, figure out what's going on with a boots on the ground real estate agent.
We went from Sydney to Broken Hill or somewhere there a couple of weeks ago, which was fantastic. Yeah.
And tonight we are going to beautiful sunny Maroochydore on the Sunshine Coast with Damien Said from Century 21 Maroochydore. G'day, Damien.
G'day, guys. How are you?
Very well, thank you, mate.
Damien,
welcome to the show.
Damien, I gave you a big rap before, but you already know how good you are as a real estate practitioner. One of one of the world's leading real estate practitioners that we have. And I picked Maroochydore or the Sunshine Coast a while ago, and we just have such an expanding team. I just wanted to find out from you, Damien, what was your reason for wanting to sell real estate there, to be there, to live in the area?
Mate, for me, and I suppose for a lot of people, the Sunshine Coast is just all about and it's probably, you hear it a lot, but it genuinely is a very relaxed coastal lifestyle. And without having to forego any of the trimmings of city living, geographically we're less than an hour from Brisbane, but we've got so many natural surrounds, from Glasshouse Mountains 20 minutes away to coast beaches up and down the coast. It's just a stunning part of the world.
I've actually been having a little read up on Maroochydore ahead of our chat. It sounds like you've got some interesting development in the area too.
It is unbelievable. Just in a nutshell, there's a $2 billion private hospital that's now fully completed and underway. There's a $400 million expansion to our local airport with flights to Asia due and confirmed to start in 2020, a $50 million expansion to the Sunshine Plaza, but our new Maroochydore CBD is about to become the largest urban greenfield project ever undertaken in the country. So it couldn't be more exciting times for our real estate market, definitely.
They're all, sorry, Damien, they've all left the studio. They're getting some tickets to fly up there to start buying them. You'll see them all tomorrow up on the Sunshine Coast.
I should be wearing my board shorts right now. Celebration.
But it looks like you've also got a great sense of community up there. Another little tidbit from the area, the Maroochydore Roos broke their grand final AFL drought and they actually just beat the Noosa Tigers on the weekend. So you've got some good athletes up there as well.
They did. A couple of my good mates, Sammy Nelson, who I play cricket with, was in that team. So congratulations to the boys, definitely.
Damien, what are people buying? Are they buying apartments? Are they buying homes?
We've got a really wide spectrum of properties available for an area such as we've got. For around $500,000, you can still buy a really good home on a traditional block within 4 to 5 kilometres of the beach. And then in unit market, we've got an entry point of about $300,000 for good quality residential apartments all the way up. Like, obviously, we've got a really strong top end there as well, but across the line, our top end of the market is moving really well again now, thanks a lot to a lot of the infrastructure changes, but the median house price across the board is just in massive demand.
Your marketplace, you talk about that apartment, 300 entry point. I'd go back 36 months and the entry point would have been 200, 210.
Oh, definitely. Even if you take the housing market, our median house price on the coast was $420 back in 2012, so it's $550 or $552 at the moment. It's a big jump in 3 years. So the unit market as well is very, very strong.
But that sounds so attractive to me because I'm in Sydney and buying a house for $550 is like a dream. You're lucky if you can get a studio now. So that's what makes moving somewhere like Maroochydore so attractive.
Absolutely. And with what we've got to come in the next 3 to 5 years, I think it's phenomenal value. And we're seeing so many people. I've got a staff member who's just moved up from Sydney, actually, that Charles kindly sent our way, and he can't believe his luck that he's discovered the Sunshine Coast.
I hope he's doing well for you too, Damien. From what I can see or what I can hear from you, there's still a lot of upside. There's good employment in the area because of infrastructure that's working as well. So, Damien, thank you. It's been a battle trying to get you on this show because you're so busy. So I really appreciate you coming on tonight. Thank you,
mate. No trouble at all. Pleasure.
There we go. That's Damien Side from Century 21 in Maroochydore, beautiful sunny part of the world. Send me up there now. I'm sure I can dial in remotely like Trevor Long does and do the show when I need to.
You could play with the Maroochydore Roos.
Yeah, that's right. I could take a few hangers up there on the sunny coast. 13 12 83 is our number. Let's chat auctions with Tom Panos. Tom's an auctioneer, a 2-decade veteran of the business. He knows what's going on and he joins us once more on Property Fast Track. G'day, Tom.
Good evening, gang. How are you?
Doing terrifically well, thank you, mate. Let's start with Melbourne. Another strong weekend with Melbourne, outpacing Sydney yet again.
Yeah, well, that's, now getting a clear trend line, and it's not just once or twice. We're clearly seeing that the demand by buyers is that, generally speaking, about 3/4 of the properties that are going to go to auction in Melbourne are going to be snapped up by buyers, and that trend line continued again this week. I've been talking to Melbourne agents today, and they're just saying that if they could just get more stock, they would sell more. I said to them, has there been much difference between this year and last year? And they haven't noticed the breather that Sydney has taken in recent times. So it's been red hot. Another great week for them.
And lots of auctions too. It's not as though they're only doing a couple of hundred auctions. That's as we always say, auction capital of Australia, probably over 1,000 plus auctions again, and more to come, except for the AFL and the NRL, etc., etc.
Yeah, well, the AFL is going to matter more than the NRL, believe me, Charles.
Sorry, where are you again?
He's in Sydney. He's a Sydney boy.
I'm in Sydney, but I know that on Grand Final weekend, real estate pretty much continues in Sydney. It's Melbourne where it actually
everything dies.
comes to a halt. But this was the largest number of properties that went to auction that we've seen in many months this week. And as Charles points out, that's why that number in Melbourne is good, because we're talking about large volumes.
Now, Tommy, Sydney recorded 69.3%, 4%, sorry. So it's come under 70. Now, that's a new ground for Sydney.
Yes, it is a new ground for Sydney, and it's one that I think won't change too much. Charles, next weekend's auctions, I don't have the numbers as yet, but I can tell you it will be the biggest auction numbers in Sydney I would actually say for the year, because everyone's brought them forward because of the long weekend. So there's not much. There's not that many auctions. It's got nothing to do with grand final. It's got more to do with the fact that it's a 3-day.
Yes, it is.
Weekend.
Do you think we'll hit the mid-60s? What's your guess?
I think we're going to get Yeah, I think 65, 66, 67,
Okay.
I think so. It is. I have got 16 auctions scheduled, and I'm going to take a sleeping pill on the plane. I'm flying from Perth to Sydney on the red eye on the Friday night.
Ouch.
So I've got a massive day. Yes, Charles, I'm actually going to put my neck out and say that when we're talking next week, I think that we're going to be close to...
What's a Greek currency, Tom?
the old ones.
The real one. The real one.
Monopoly money.
We might have to have a bet, Tom.
Yeah. But, look, Saturday I had a reasonable day. I've got to tell you, first time I sold the house in Newtown under $1 million in a long time. So,
Wow.
But that wouldn't have happened. That wouldn't have happened a few months
Was
ago.
it 2 bedrooms, Tom?
It was the one bed I sold
Right.
for $880,000.
Oh my God, it's probably like the size of a crate.
Yeah.
Now, Tom, since I've got you on the line, I've had my heart broken at auction, and you're the auctioneer, you're the specialist. My heartbreak took me a couple of years to get back in the game because I was like, that's no fun. I'm not doing that again. What's your advice for actually being the winner on auction day, other than just having a bigger bank account?
Well, the big bank account's a big component of it, I must say.
Dang.
But,
Don't be poor.
I must say, look, the only thing I'll say is this, bid assertively, so maybe there's a possibility with your strong voice and your fast and furious bidding, you may leave the competition thinking, she's not going to stop. What's the point?
No. I'm hearing you now. You're just trying to get me to push up the auction price with my assertiveness and my loud voice. That's not going to work
Bids
for
the
me.
loudest wins. If only it was that
Just bully
simple.
them out of the ring.
Yeah. Great advice, Tom Panos, auctioneer, veteran of the industry, joins us every week. We'll talk to you again next week, Tom. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Tom. I'll talk to you a little later on.
Absolutely. Thank you. Good evening.
That's Tom Panos. And Charles, that brings us to a close this evening. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much, Miggy. Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
People can catch you on Sky Business tonight.
Yes, 9 o'clock till 9:30, and Mr. Panos is going to present 3 properties that are listed on the very successful realestate.com website.
There we
tonight.
go. Charles Tarby, it's been a pleasure having you on.
Thank you.
We'll see you again next week.